Welcome to Major in Adulting, the podcast where I talk about the transition from uni or trade to work, life, and everything in between in your adulting world. I'm Romaine, mum of 4 young Gen Z adults, and after more than 2 decades helping people and organisations navigate change, I've learned that adulting isn't a finish line. It is a process of learning, adjusting, and showing up each and every time. Each week here, I share honest stories, practical lessons, and real conversations to help you navigate adulting with confidence, while encouraging genuine curiosity and empathy between generations so we can better understand one another. Now, in today's conversation is one that I've genuinely been looking forward to because it's a window into how Gen Z see the world without the filter of a parent's lens. And if there's anything that I'm learning from speaking with my Gen Z hosts, leaders in industry, and through my own parenting, it's this. You are the most data-driven, fact-checking generation in history. You don't just listen, you do verify. And that's something that we need to be really conscious of. Now, a fun fact, Gen Z now make up 27% of the Australian workforce, and 86% say purpose matters when choosing a job. That's phenomenal, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. And here's something a little bit more interesting. While many leaders feel Gen Z hop between jobs, our ABS, or Australian Bureau of Statistics data, shows that job mobility for 15 to 24-year-olds is around 11 to 12%. Now, that's half of what it was in the 90s in my generation. So I don't think it's a generation that's drifting, but it's definitely a generation that's choosing intentionally. Now, my guest today is someone who represents some of the things that I admire most about Gen Z: an authenticity in how he shows up, a willingness to explore different paths, and a quiet confidence in shaping adulthood on his own terms. Ben John is a secondary school teacher who moves between the classroom, the sports field, and the creative world with an ease and honesty that feels distinctly Gen Z. His journey hasn't followed a straight line. Sports science, a master's degree in education, CRT or casual relief work, and a thriving creative life. And that's exactly what makes his perspective so refreshing. He's living the reality of early adulthood while guiding the next generation through theirs, giving him a true and immediate sense of what young people are thinking, feeling, and navigating today. He really understands what it's like to explore, pivot, and experiment and still keep moving forward with intention. Ben, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'm very excited to have this conversation with you.
Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to have the conversation too, and thanks for the great introduction.
You're welcome. So now, Ben, your path, as I've described, it already reflects so much of what the Gen Z generation navigate today. But just to give our leaders a little bit of context, a little bit more than what I've shared, what's led you to the different paths that you've explored with sports science, CRT teaching, and the creativity blend?
Yeah, well, coming out of school, I was never 100% certain on what I wanted to do,
Yeah,
and I guess to this day, I'm more certain, but I would still not say I'm 100%
yeah,
certain on what I want to do, which is sort of why we're here today. But I knew I had general interests, as you said, in sport, in music, and lots of other things. So I guess initially it was more about um, trying to choose pathways that could keep my options open to lots of different things.
uh-huh.
And that was through initially the sports science degree. Um, and whether that was going into teaching, which I eventually did, going into something else related to sport, um, that just enabled me to keep my options open and yeah, find out what I enjoyed most, what I wanted to do, and didn't feel like I needed to rush into something. And then on the flip side of that, with more of my like music and creative stuff, just exploring that as something that was somewhat foreign to me until around 18 years old. I'd never really, obviously I love music, but and played a little bit of guitar, but never really delved into that as deeply as I have now. So just finding the balance between both of those things, and I guess trying to enjoy both of them at this stage of life, not feeling like I needed to commit to one, commit to the other,
Yeah.
um, and enjoying my early 20s as I am so far.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, that's that purpose thing, which we'll talk about a little bit more.
Yeah.
Now, what are some of these experiences have taught you about what you enjoy or what you want out of work and life? And you've shared a little bit of that just now. Um, what else is there that I guess that balance of fulfilling that purpose and joy at this point in time? And I think when we originally caught up about this podcast, I think some of that purpose thing has actually come from observing my generation, your parents and other and similar age groups. We probably whinge a little bit about our lives.
Yeah, well, I won't throw mum and dad under the
No.
bus, but no, definitely. Like, I think um, seeing them, live the lives they have and build the lives they have, like, it's very inspiring to want to strive for that success in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
But equally, and at this stage of life, yeah, them encouraging me and also seeing how they've lived their lives. Definitely, it's led me to want to continue to explore and not settle for something that I'm not fulfilled with.
yeah,
Um, and then, yeah, both through their encouragement and through seeing them now, continuing to work and having to work and maybe having to do something for such a long period of time, um, has made me think, wow, do I really want to be doing that one thing for such a long time?
yeah,
So yeah, I think a lot of people are starting to sort of realize that. Whether I think it's good for the individual, but it might not necessarily be great for long-term growth and development of like society. But I think for individual identity, I think it's extremely important, and for your well-being and things like that.
yeah. No, that's interesting. That comment you made may not be good for society. Do you want to share a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Yeah, well, I guess it's um, if people are wanting to continue to grow business and grow society and grow, we can't have. I'm going to say this loosely. We can't have people just continuing to mull along for a long time and in limbo, um, to try and find something they want to do, even for a really specific example, like having to move out of home.
Yeah,
You need to pay rent, you need to buy groceries, you need to do lots of things. I'd love to be able to not work as much, really try and pursue music and these sort of things, but with a life that you need to live and support and go on to continue to grow, then there is the added pressure that you need to have something that's supporting you and your backbone to be able to get through that sort of period.
yeah, sustainable. Yeah, and we'll talk about that passion piece in a little bit because I think the environment that your generation has grown up has probably shaped that thinking as well. Now, when starting this podcast and speaking with, young adults like yourself, Ben, leaders, and also reflecting on my own parenting, I've really shifted how I see things. I no longer see them just through the parent's lens. I like to think that I'm now seeing them at a helicopter view and that actually I've contributed to some of this without realizing at the time, not through my own parenting, but also through the choices that I've made around what schools my kids have gone to, perhaps even, and then that's around their friendship groups and that whole
Yeah.
conversation. Now, I think one of the differences is if I reflect, Gen X, my gen, has grown up with a sense of duty and conformity. And while we may have inwardly brushed with that or pushed up against it, we haven't outwardly acted on that. But I
Yeah.
think your generation has definitely grown up with, as you've mentioned, this sense of individuality and identity, emotional literacy, and we can talk about that. We may have gone a little bit overboard on that, and
Mm.
maybe a message to find what lights you up. And you've talked about that around still finding your purpose. And I think when those value systems meet, whether at home, at school, or in the workplace, the first place that this tension shows up can be around that communication. So now, whether Gen Z can communicate, it's not necessarily about whether Gen Z can communicate, but I think it's how you communicate. And when you
Mm.
want that clarity, you're definitely setting the boundaries and when you prefer that space. So, with that, what do you think Gen Xers most misunderstand about your generation?
About my own generation,
Yeah,
you say?
about Gen Zs.
Yeah, so the main sort of misunderstanding, I guess, um, would be just around the time that people need to make these decisions and like explore that decision.
Yeah,
Whether that's, could be over like years and years of time exploring different options, changing university degrees, careers multiple times
yeah,
before reaching that point. I think it can be hard, and I would struggle with this, seeing someone that I care about struggling to find their purpose, find their um, point that they want to reach, and
yeah,
feeling like they need to do more to help this person to get there. Where it's sort of the opposite in the way that giving them that time to explore, learn, make mistakes, etc., is the thing that's going to get them there quicker.
yeah,
It's not necessarily the forceful, not forceful, but yeah, just like making them commit to certain things. Being able to be fluid is the best way to find the answer quicker.
yeah.
Um, so I think the understanding that it sort of needs to happen within a certain time window, um, and like this podcast for is a great example that maybe it's a really long window where you might find your purpose way down the line. Um, so I think it's, yeah, just putting certain um, ideas, measures in place that it needs to be,
A finite
done by.
period of time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So like same with like by the end of year 12, you need to know what degree you want to do. By when you're in year 7, your parents are probably saying, "Oh, what subjects do you want to do?" When you're in primary school, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like this concept that we need to have an answer and a solution for what we want to be when we're older is sort of just constantly ingrained in different ways through not only the education system, but through life, through everything, through experience.
yeah. No, I think that is a source of a little bit of tension as well, or a bit of frustration from my
Mm.
generation. It's like, come on, guys, I haven't had a life. I haven't had a life
Yeah.
where I've had the luxury of
Yeah.
choosing and and
Yeah.
switching out, jobs and degrees. And you guys seem to want this, but I think also that's come from maybe observing. Now I'm reflecting and observing maybe our own language from a Gen X perspective of our work life has not necessarily been fulfilling. It has been one of duty. And then as you get older and you've got kids and you make those lifestyle choices about where you might want to send them to schools or where you might want to live, so they then kind of grind you and force you into that sort of chosen path.
Mm.
And yeah, I think you guys have maybe observed that, and that's part of this why it's so important for your generation now, and you're making those purposeful decisions and happily changing if it doesn't meet your needs at that point in time. So I don't
Yeah.
necessarily think that's a bad thing. I actually think Now that I'm learning, I think it's a good thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think there
Oh,
is that
good
little
to
bit of
hear.
rush. Yeah, well, I don't represent everyone. Um, Now, you're a secondary school teacher, and you teach both in public and private,
Yeah, correct.
and your day to day, teachings with your students. Where do you see communication breaking down between generations, and how do they view you in the classroom?
I think as the relatively young teacher,
Yeah,
it can benefit me in a lot of ways,
yeah,
in the way I'm able to connect and understand with how they're feeling, what they're thinking.
yeah.
And even just in my time from starting as a pre service teacher at university to now, um, seeing the education model shift in a way of really trying to, it was really sort of new-ish, I guess. And even when I was at school, really, it was just starting to come in about more purpose, more identity, more
Mm,
student-driven learning, more student focus. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it?
yeah,
Instead of conforming to this general curriculum.
right.
Yes, of course, overall curriculum has to be in place to keep the system functioning.
Mm.
But I think each year education models keep evolving to support the student, focus on the student even more than they have before, focus on the individual. What do they want to do, um, and how can we best support each different student, not just a cohort of students to get to a certain endpoint.
That's really interesting because obviously this is then going to spill out into the workforce, right?
Yeah.
Around that individuality, which is, I think, some of the challenges that leaders are starting to face into, but not really understanding that.
Mm.
So I think that's a really interesting perspective and one that I wasn't aware of. Um, and so how do you think that will impact? What will leaders need to do? I'm putting you on the spot here. What will leaders need to do differently, do you think, to cater for this more individual purpose style of learning that,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I think there's just going to have to be more understanding and grace in a way, like things like you can already see it in workplaces like well-being days, team days, that sort of thing,
yeah,
where it's focused on the individual and getting to know them better and understanding them.
yeah,
You see that in schools because of camps, experiences, lots of different co-curricular things you can do outside of general curriculum. Um, that's going to be a thing that's going to have to come more into the workplace about how can this person's job um, be changed or modified to suit them as an individual? How can they still complete the role we need them to complete,
mm,
but how can they do it in a way that's suited to them? And what can they do to help the team as a collective of different individuals instead of, like I said before, one cohort just moving towards a goal?
yeah. And I think that that word team is really important because I think as much as then it's the individual that you're talking about, that the focus is on that individual. We need to, I guess, understand that that individual becomes part of a wider team or part of a
Mm.
bigger community or society, that somehow we need to find that balance, which I think is challenging because, Gen Xers and boomers, we come from a
Yeah.
totally different mindset. And millennials they're probably a bit of the trailblazers of the, I guess, behaviors that Gen Zs are actively living. So yeah, this real blend in the workforce is going to be interesting, and I'm really curious about how what you're seeing in terms of the pivot in the education system is
Mm.
becoming more focused on the individual. That's fascinating.
Yeah, and I think even for like a really basic example, I can even remember like when I first was at school, you're
Yeah,
in a maths class and there's one or there's one question and every student in the class has to try and answer this one question. Whereas now there's 3 different levels. The student can choose their individual level that they want to work at. There's a whole different class for excelling students. There's a whole different class for students who might need extra support. So this agency that students are now getting in their learning, they're going to feel like they have for their whole lives, which they equally and definitely should. So
Yeah.
they're going to take this feeling into the workplace like, I need to be able to make decisions for myself
Myself. Yeah.
while I'm working, which is going to help the team
Yeah.
instead of just working in a certain one dimensional way. So I think that's like a sort of basic example in how I've seen the change and how that might translate into the workplace.
Yeah, for sure. Now, when you say agency in the classroom, are you saying because I guess there's always been those levels of students that can go on and do higher
Mm.
maths or whatever, but are you saying they're now more involved in that decision?
Yeah, definitely. I
Yeah.
think
Okay.
teachers are now asking, even at uni, it was a thing of really trying to promote belonging and agency in learning. So asking students, obviously, you need to find a balance because if you're giving students agency 24/7, it's going to be hard to always hit the goals. But
Yeah.
um, giving them choices. Should we work on this today? Should we do this today? In PE, would you rather play this game or this game? They can both have the same end goal, but giving them multiple options for how they best learn so they can all achieve the same thing. Because one certain net and wall game might not be as effective for 5 students in your class, whereas the other 10 will find it really, really effective. So giving them that option to reach the same outcome.
Is what's important. And
Yeah.
how do you, that sounds really challenging as a teacher or a leader. How do you, because you've got to be more flexible and adaptable in your thinking, right?
Yeah.
How does your approach?
Yeah. Well, definitely. It makes it a lot harder. And that's, I think, a lot of the pressure that, well, one aspect of pressure that teachers are feeling. It's a lot more planning.
Yeah.
It's a lot more collaboration with other teachers. There's a lot more behavior management involved because you're now managing 2 groups of students. So, yeah, it's definitely extremely challenging. But I think when you can find the balance and find that line, well, I've found that it's the most successful way for students to learn and to ensure all students are learning and feeling like they belong in the classroom.
And I guess that would just translate also into their behaviours and even attention in class, that they feel that they have more agency.
Yeah, more connected students are going to learn better and they're going to come to school more often if they're going to feel like they're involved in the classroom, they're enjoying the classroom. They're going to, like I've worked in some schools where just getting students in the door is the biggest success of the day, not even learning something.
Right.
So being able to have them feel like they belong and they can have something to look forward to. They can have something they want to learn about and they want to explore, even in a subject that they might not enjoy, is probably the most important thing before you even, in my eyes, deliver any sort of teaching.
Yeah. Look, I don't know. I'm going to say I reckon the older generation teachers might find that quite challenging.
Yeah, well, no, it is very hard. I'm not saying it's not easy. I'm not saying I
No,
never found it
for
that
any
it's hard.
generation, but I think again, going to that mindset, it'd be like, hell, I've got to cater for,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. It's not just
yeah.
about the teacher saying what the child should do or the student. It's about the student also being able to use that word that you said, agency, to say,
Yeah,
look, this isn't working for me. I need it taught this way. I want to be learning this way.
and I
That,
think I had the advantage that when I was at uni, that was what I was being taught
yeah,
of how to teach,
yeah.
and I totally understand how if you've never sort of been given that open mind to teaching, that it would be very foreign and very confusing and confronting in a lot of ways.
Ah.
Um, so yeah, I think it's just the change and shift of education and what students' needs are.
I think it's great, and I guess this is where that deep sense of purpose comes in because it's really foundational.
Mm,
Um, that that I think Gen Z generation and also the alphas that are coming up, which you're probably just maybe starting to see in your cohort, it
yeah.
really is about finding your passion and following your purpose. And it's starting in that classroom. So it is this real self. So does that, did that message feel inspiring or overwhelming when you were at school? Because for some schools, that was definitely something. And I know with the schools that my kids went to, coming to that year 10 point, what subjects, and you talked about this, what subjects should I choose? It was very much the mantra of do what you're good at, do what you enjoy. Is that still something that you're seeing in both public and private?
Yeah, definitely. I think that is still, yeah, finding that balance between what you enjoy the most, but still having that sort of overwhelming pressure that you need to succeed in a lot of ways.
Mm,
So you need to choose what you might be good at necessarily, and it might not be what you enjoy most. But um, I think the way that the system's currently structured, there is always going to be that pressure for
mm,
success
mm,
and the need in for success. Um, but I think students definitely feel like that they have more freedom and more choice and less pressure. But walking around in the corridors, talking to students, um, people are always going to talk about what did you get on the test, how did you go on the test,
right. So it
what,
still comes back
how.
to that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's still like it. You come out of the senior students come out of a sack and they're thinking, "How did I go? What was this question? What was?" There still is that you're not walking out of those classrooms and not even talking about what's just happened. So with the way that it's currently shaped, there is always going to be that pressure, and yeah, definitely, I think it can be overwhelming to feel like you need to make decisions at that moment that are going to impact your whole life, supposedly.
Mm.
And even now, like I feel in decisions I make now, you think, wow, is this really going to impact what I do for the next 5 years when you make certain decisions? I think, yeah, it's definitely shifting towards feeling less pressure, but I think, yeah, with the way it's currently designed, there's always going to be that pressure around that.
Yeah, and I guess there's that comparison thing, which has probably become more prevalent with social media, and we'll talk about that because we've got this new social media ban coming up soon.
Mm,
Um, Now, you're in a rare role of a Gen Z teaching the next wave of Gen Zs, and the world that they're growing up in is completely different to what I grew up with. Um, what are you seeing as one of the other characteristics that I'm learning is that seniority or titles doesn't instantly mean respect. So how are you seeing that as an older Gen Z in your classroom? And I think you mentioned that you're finding it a little bit easier because you're a Gen Z yourself. But is that a fair statement to start with?
yeah, I think in terms of like if you're meaning teachers needing titles, or is it more
Um,
about students?
just in general, I think like in the workplace and obviously in the teaching classroom is an example that just because you've got a title or you're older, it doesn't
Yeah.
instantly give you that respect because I
Mm,
think um, they want to see it lived. And also because this generation, your generation, is so digitally savvy, you'll go looking up something. So if someone's seeing you
yeah.
saying something, you're going to call it bullshit.
Mm, yeah.
So, how is that translating for you? You're a Gen Z, an older Gen
Mm.
Z now teaching. Is that a true statement around just because you're a teacher doesn't give you that instant seniority and respect?
Yeah, I think there's a sort of respect in a way that I can respect and understand that they're going to have their own opinions. They're going to be able to do their own research, as you touched on. But then the respect is coming back the other way, that I'm going to do my best to guide them to learn, explore their own interests and things, not necessarily in a way that what I'm going to deliver is right for them all the time, but in a way that, in a sort of trusting way, that the shaping that I provide is enough for them to sort of then branch off in a way that they know they can through their own agency. So, for like to use a metaphor, like as the trunk of the tree,
Yeah.
I'm providing them the core and the root system,
Yeah.
to then for them to be able to then branch off how they feel they can best learn, and then how they, yeah, can explore what they want. I think definitely those titles aren't as black and white as they used to be, but the understanding that, yeah, better ideas might come from different people, and these things like workshops and like these words I don't think were ever used as much as they are now, about workshopping and brainstorming. And that's, the classroom's now more of a open dialogue experience
Oh.
where there's shared voice instead of one voice for 50 minutes and 75 minutes and then the students all leave.
Right.
That's the sort of a thing. I've never taught like that, and I've rarely seen a classroom ever work like that.
But that's how you would have been taught, I'm guessing.
Yeah, especially it was definitely shifting. Like, I in some classrooms, some
Okay.
teachers,
Yeah.
but like I know, even back to primary school, that can be sort of how um, classes were taught, where you just sit on the floor and you listen for, and
40 minutes or whatever. Yeah.
that's how you learn.
Fall asleep
Um,
or tune out if it
yeah,
gets
yeah.
boring.
But no, nowadays it's much more of a shared learning experience,
Oh.
and in that way, the teacher's also learning about their students, and then in return, they'll be able to cater for their students' needs better than they were
Yeah,
before.
so this is really interesting because it really is then bit more symbiotic in the classroom where it's not
Yeah,
just, as you said, it's not just the teacher standing up there and commanding the respect, but it's, I guess, as you've used the word, guiding and maybe initiating the conversation, but allowing um, everyone to contribute. Wow, that's
yeah.
fascinating, Ben.
There you
Teaching
go.
is really, but and
Yeah,
also
it's another
I'm
180.
yeah, my brain's now going to really now this is more an understanding of how this is translating into the workforce because you've got a generation who are used to and in some ways expected to use their voice and agency to talk about what learning means for them, how they want to learn, and even just in terms of subject matter content, I'm guessing. So then when
Yeah,
it comes to the workforce, that's just going to be a transition for them. And, maybe leaders, not maybe, leaders my age, that's a whole way of leading and in some instances leading and having that voice. And as you said, it's not just your learning as well. So it's
yeah,
having that humility, yeah. And do they come more prepared then into class to have those conversations?
yeah. I think students are ready to talk, and they're ready to. Not all students, obviously, everyone's different in the way they act, but yeah, they're more open to those discussions, and they're more they're ready to learn in such a way.
Yeah.
Um, in Inversely, sort of on the flip side, though, which is, I can talk about a little comparison between when I was at school and now, with the introduction of like ChatGPT and AI and
Yes.
lots of those things.
Yes.
Um, I've seen a huge shift in students' critical thinking, sort of dropping away with the ease of like being able to type in a question and get an answer
Ah,
instantly. So how that, and social media is kind of similar. How these sort of influences, which weren't as present when I was at school,
ah,
how they're going to impact students' critical thinking and their ability to sort of explore and find purpose when they can get an answer for something within 3 seconds instead of developing their own opinion, um, which I think, although it might be as simple as answering a geography question, does linger into your overall decision making and your overall motivation and drive to explore what you want to do. I
Mm.
think it will affect that. So how you can sort of use it as a tool to benefit learning, but not taking away from students' explorative nature, which they can use outside the classroom for um, more important things, arguably, in life.
That's a really interesting topic, and obviously, your students have access to AI on their devices at school, or is this something that they go home and would have access to?
Well, from what I've seen, it's reasonably accessible at school
Yeah,
because it can be a really beneficial learning tool
yeah.
to to summarize something, to get a
Mm,
quick synopsis of a topic.
mm,
Um, but I think when it's taking away from the critical thinking nature, that is going to affect students long term in their ability to be motivated to strive for different things in life when they're used to having an answer there within 5 seconds.
mm. And I think some of the research is or forecast is that obviously with AI, critical thinking and analysis is becoming even more important for
Mm.
the very reason that you've just pointed out. So and it's not necessarily correct. So we still have to put that judgment over what AI spits out at us
Yeah,
to have that ability. So yeah, that's an interesting challenge in the classroom. So that's, I guess you've shared some of the patterns that you're seeing with students and around the pressure with identity and direction for the future. Do you think younger Gen Zs um, feel more freedom, or is there more anxiety?
well, I think with more freedom can come more anxiety
Mm,
because the having the freedom can be great for some students. They don't want to be boxed into certain things, but when you don't know what necessarily you want to do, or some students, some people love having the structure, the rigidity,
uh-huh.
the focus, that can definitely increase anxiety. And some students might struggle with the freedom in the sense that there's too much choice, there's too many things. What do I want to do? How do I know which paths? How do I know which 4 out of 7 subjects to choose?
Mm,
While they all will probably be great and they're all very different, having the pressure that you're making the wrong decision can definitely lead to it. So, with the freedom, I think can come the anxiety, but I think overall having the freedom um, does benefit majority of students,
yeah.
and it's just about um, supporting them to feel comfortable with that uncertainty, with the freedom of choice.
And is that uncertainty or freedom, does that translate to like you as an older Gen Z as well? Uh,
Yeah, definitely. I think coming out of school, there was a lot of anxiety about the uncertainty of what I wanted to do, and seeing some people, some of my friends, some people around me know exactly the uni course that they wanted to do. They've known since like a year, they've known since they were in year eight that they wanted to do this, and then they've gone on to do it now. And even seeing now friends getting long term jobs, like quite stable jobs, I would say,
yeah.
definitely adds to that anxiety and uncertainty. But I think as I've gotten older, I've been able to better deal with and sort of enjoy that uncertainty and not having to worry about um, what I'm doing. And even like a few weeks ago, I was talking with some friends and they spoke about what your 5 year plan looks like.
Okay.
And my everyone liked my answer at the time, but they were saying, I said, my best 5-year plan is not having to worry about what my 5-year
5-year
plan
plan
is.
is. Yeah.
So having sort of enjoying that uncertainty and being comfortable being uncomfortable, to use a cliche term, but sort of, yeah, I think I've gotten a lot better at being comfortable with that and sort of enjoying that. That means I have freedom. I can do what I want. I can explore the areas I want to. I can change within a matter of months, weeks, days what I'm doing. Um, Having that freedom is quite freeing for me. But I definitely know how it might not be comfortable for other people and
Mm.
how it can definitely give you stress and anxiety. I'm not saying I'm not stressed about what my career is going to be, definitely, but I've got better at dealing with that uncertainty, I think.
And I think you touched on it at the start. It's about where you are now and feeling that sense of fulfillment or purpose. And you're happy with the certainty of that now, but the uncertainty of, that 5-year plan, as you've just said,
Yeah,
which again, I don't think that's a bad thing. I'm a bit
it is.
unusual. But I'm curious about this sense of purposeful fulfillment, why it is so important to your generation. Obviously, it's in your education system, it's been through maybe social media, even as parents. But why has it become so important that you're willing to embrace that uncertainty?
um, I think it's, well, for me, it's a combination of an individual and a social thing.
Yeah.
I think individually, the focus on mental health and well-being has greatly improved through society through lots of different ways. And then because you are having to work so much in your life, spend a lot of time at work,
Uh,
people want to feel happier doing what they're doing.
uh,
So I think people are willing to wait to find that spark, that thing that makes them happiest, and change if something's not making them happy,
uh,
because you are spending so much time and there is such a greater focus and support for mental health and well-being,
uh,
as well as physical health and lots of other things in workplaces. And then socially, I think, as you sort of touched on, with social media and even just sort of the ability to have a wider network of people that you know, you're able to see lots of different jobs. You're able to see lots of people doing lots of different things. You can go on YouTube and watch a variety of different jobs that you might have never even heard about.
uh,
Um, like people doing different jobs. You can see on Instagram people doing a million different jobs, and you're like, wow, I never even knew something like that was a possibility. So I think having all these different options and seeing all these different options sparks your creativity more to want to try different things and not being as confined to um I'm going to say standard, that's probably wrong, standard jobs. And there's definitely a place for those jobs. I'm not trying to knock that. Like teaching's a very standard job.
uh,
It's always going to be a thing. It's always has been a thing. um there's definitely a place for those roles, but the changing workplace landscape, and the ability to see and know and understand a variety of different jobs, I think, means that people are more willing to explore different things, even if it's not what they're seeing online.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And from my observation now, as I'm reflecting and doing this podcast, I think one of the things that's really struck me is that your generation, I think, has really clicked that time is an asset, but it's not something that can be compounded or grown.
Mm,
And so
yeah.
I think for you guys, it's really about living your best from the get go and not waiting till you're 50 plus and having done
Mm,
the grind. And so I feel that that's where, apart from your education system that we've talked about, that's supporting that individual purpose, I think that's also, for me,
mm.
something that I feel that your generation is acutely aware of. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I think, um, even like you hear a lot of parents, well, quite a common thing that I'll hear from parents is make sure you go traveling now, make sure you do all these things in your
Yeah.
20s, make sure you do that. And I think the mindset of people are willing to, at my age, not have that many savings away, tucked away. They're willing to go overseas, travel, do lots of different things, spend money, live their life while they can,
Uh,
instead of having this mindset, as you sort of just touched on, that I need to be banking all this now, and then when I'm 50, 60, I can go traveling overseas. I can live a happy, relaxing retirement.
uh,
I think from the get go, yeah, as you said, there people nowadays are willing to be sort of a bit in limbo, struggling a bit, if as long as they're having fun and they're trying new things and they're experiencing new things. And I think that's quite a common mindset that a lot of the new generation's taking.
yeah, I think you're spot on there, and I think that uncertainty that you talked about is both empowering and could be stressful, but I think your generation is willing to forego that certainty part of it because you want to live your best life and you're striving for that from the start.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think that's a bad thing. I'm going to get canned for this.
Yeah, yeah, you're gonna be on our side of that.
I know. Well, yeah. Listen. As I'm doing this, I say to people when I make decisions now, I'm channeling my inner Gen Z, and they look at me like,
Yeah,
"Well, I'm doing what feels right."
yeah,
Um, Now, connection is another thing that I feel matters to your generation. And what I hear from your young adults is that you do crave that realness and authenticity of people who actually show up. And you want connection, and you're figuring out how to build it in a world that doesn't always make it easy. So I know with the new social media platform banning that's coming in for the under 16s, what do you think that's going to mean for in the classroom as well as how these kids show up?
yeah. Well, I think because they're the current sort of under 16s, I guess, are so used to that being a normal part of their lives.
Uh,
There's going to be a fair bit of angst and frustration towards it,
uh,
and I think the social implications at school are going to be even more important now than they ever were before.
uh,
Um, if school is going to, and as students spend a lot of time at school each week, each year, um, they're going to become even more important towards their social development, um, and how that's going to translate beyond when they're 16 and preparing them for a world where that is a, a big part of the world, social media, and how that might be used in the workplace. They're kind of losing that ability to develop that through their own experiences. It's going to have
uh,
to be something that's taught in classrooms because and used more regularly in classrooms in a regulated way,
uh,
um, because they're losing that outside classroom experience.
And they do. Well, we all use it as a connection point to
Mm,
a world beyond the people and experiences that we have at our living felt fingertips. So yeah, I think that's going to be definitely something but connection is definitely something that I see is important. Um,
yeah.
and you're probably going to see that differently in how your students are going to show up. In your opinion, do you think it's a good thing, a bad thing? Not that,
Um, I think I'm kind of on the fence, I guess you could say, about it because I think the um, regulation aspect of it
uh,
is quite beneficial. There is definitely a lot of bad things on social media,
uh,
a lot of bad messaging, and a lot of messaging that doesn't support um, good child development
uh-huh,
and growth into the society. But at the same time, the social connection that students build, the social development that they get, the um, emotional development, even just general understanding of the world is going to be decreased in all these students and is going to have to be placed into a different means of learning, whether
Mm.
that's more conversations in the classroom with families.
Oh,
Um, so I think potentially there might have been a better balance that could have been found
mhm.
between banning
Just a
social media.
yeah, just a blanket
Yeah,
ban,
and
yeah.
yeah, just a blanket. But I understand why that can be needed.
Mm,
But I think there could have been better ways to regulate is the best word to regulate it to better support their and development and yeah better protect young people from what can be a very um, deep dark place at
mm,
times.
mm. Which is, I think, the thing that's probably triggered this, to be honest, and that
Yeah.
parents need help. I guess monitoring and managing that, but yeah,
Mm.
it's gonna create a different communication channel, which, look, I think some of the some of the flip around the digital is that some of the Gen Zs perhaps aren't so good at verbally communicating because you're more comfortable sitting behind a device. So
Yeah.
that face to face, particularly when it's in the workforce, is maybe something that will be a good thing that will need to be challenged
Mm.
and built on. So that's probably a
Yeah.
good thing. Now, we did talk about your creativity at the start. You want to share a little bit about your music and how you've blended your music and teaching profession so far.
Yeah. So just started DJing kind of out of school, initially out of school, just as a little kind of side hobby, and then really enjoyed it and was something that I was very sort of foreign to me, but I really felt like I thrived in and really enjoyed, and then put a lot of time and effort into networking and growing my individual sort of brand and identity around it
Uh-huh.
to get to a place where I was working quite regularly, getting a lot of work doing that. Signed to a small agency,
Okay.
um, and yeah, really sort of thriving, I guess, in that experience. Had a lot of really great experiences with that, and then equally, I enjoyed teaching. Once I started my degree, really enjoyed placement experiences I had and then yeah, now have moved into a casual role teaching. Whilst this year I've taken a little bit of a step back with the music and DJing stuff, in the sense that I was just wanting to refocus the direction that like my career was going and how much work I was putting
Uh-huh.
into a way that sort of like we said was more of a um, into areas that I enjoy most, the type of music I enjoy playing, instead of it being just a work thing where it sort of became a bit of a routine in which I had to be working through and just became a bit of a source of income. I was
Uh-huh.
definitely still enjoying it
Uh-huh.
and really enjoying the experiences, but I just needed to change the way and take a step back to refocus my own career in it and the direction I wanted it to go. And that was kind of perfect in the way that it meshed well with casual teaching.
Uh,
And then now I can sort of spend equal time, want to spend more time probably on music stuff, but equal time in both fields, trying to sort of explore both and enjoy both and having the freedom to enjoy both without having pressures from either side.
yeah, I think that's fantastic. And you know, you're making those choices and you've articulated that through. Yeah. Taking that step back, but yeah, finding that balance. That's great. Now, we're coming towards the end, and I want to ask you a few questions before we finish up. So, if
Yeah.
you could give one piece of advice to a 16-year-old trying to figure themselves out, what would that be, Ben?
If I could give a piece of advice to a 16-year-old, I would say continue to follow your passions and learn to become comfortable. Try your best to become comfortable with the uncertainty of the world, of your career, of the things that will change in your life because nothing that's meant to pass you will pass you, and opportunities will arise when you um, work for them, make them happen. But at the same time, find the balance between not sweating on those sort of things to dictate your career and just enjoy the little things that come with friendship and connection and your own identity that you enjoy doing most because these things will just work out for themselves. There's always a way to get somewhere. There's always a way to be where you want to be. And you will find how to get there eventually.
That's very wise. Very wise. I love that. That's something I think my generation could learn. What's
Yeah.
what's something that you want future employers, someone who's listening to this, to really know and understand about the Gen Z generations and the younger alphas coming up through the education system that's going to shape how we work in the future?
Yeah, I think it all comes back to understanding your individuals.
Uh,
The better you're able to connect with the people you hire, the people you work with, the better you're able to understand the person they are beyond the office, beyond the workplace. The better you're going to be able to utilize them within the workplace. The better you're going to be able to support them, to know where they need support, what they enjoy doing, and equally better understand how they can help your business and how it might not be in the way that you think that they can help you, and they have probably have the skills to be able to tell you how they best work and how they can best help you. And um, managing and moving people around in a way that supports their needs is actually going to best help your business instead of placing people in roles you think work for them.
and not keeping that connection. So once they're in that role, just set and forget. That's not going to work
Yeah.
anymore. Yeah. Yeah, great. Um, Last question. What's one thing you're uncertain about? And I think you've talked about this, but genuinely excited for?
One thing I'm uncertain about, well, I'm uncertain about my future in a lot of ways and where it might go. I definitely have a big passion for music, and I'm really excited for where that might go. But there is a lot of uncertainty around that.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then equally, I do enjoy teaching, but it is more secure in the sense that now of how in demand teachers are, and
Uh,
the fact that I can get sort of semi consistent work in that field.
uh,
So I'm very excited to see how I can continue to grow both um, in my career and as an individual, and how I can navigate the world socially, emotionally. But yeah, there is a lot of uncertainty around that. But I guess just as I've touched on, just being learning to be continuing to be comfortable with that is something that sort of put myself on and want to hopefully instill in a lot of my friends and people around me that they can feel comfortable to be that way too.
oh, I definitely think through the conversation you've definitely shared that, and you're a living example of that. So I take my hat off to you, and I think it's a great thing that you've got that flexibility. Um, Now, Ben, that brings us to the end of our conversation, and I just want to say thank you for your honesty and your perspective, and for giving us a window as well into the minds of the young emerging adults. But before we close, I'd love you to share with our listeners how they can get in touch with you if they want to hire you as as a DJ.
Yeah, so you can just my Instagram is benjohn underscore. If you want to get in contact with me, it's basically benjohn everywhere. If you look up benjohn, you'll be able to find me somewhere. So a lot of my music's on SoundCloud, and yeah, Instagram's probably the best point of contact. You can find a lot of different contact methods for me there, but hopefully there'll be some more music coming soon. And yeah, if anyone ever wants to get in contact, I'm happy to always chat about anything.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
No, thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for tuning in to Major in Adulting. If this episode gave you something to think about or reminded you that you're not doing this alone, hit follow or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Share it with someone who's finding their own way. And remember, adulting isn't about having it all figured out, but it is about finding your way together. I'm your host, Romaine. Until next time, keep on majoring in adulting.